Yo, what is going on YouTube? It is your boy GZTV back with another MCU review. Another film from 2023. Again, we're getting into the very new Marvel films. I think The Marvels is coming up next. Captain America Brave New World. We have a couple other films after that, and then we are going to be set up for the new movies, the new additions in the MCU, so be on the lookout. But we are here with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and kind of going into it, I felt a little detached, and I think that does matter. It had been a minute since I'd really sat with these characters, like obviously the holiday special we watched earlier in December, like a month ago, but not really essential to the series. So it's kind of been a long time since we watched like Volume 2 and even what they did in the Avengers. I know it doesn't seem like a long time, but in terms of like chronologically and like all the movies I've watched over the last couple of years, it's a long time. Like a couple of months since I've seen a movie is a long time, and I know as a reviewer I'm supposed to be remembering shit. And while the first two Guardians movies are still some of my favorite MCU entries ever, this one already felt like it was walking into a pretty tough situation as to how they're going to close out this trilogy. Expectations were high, nostalgia was heavy, and Marvel fatigue is real, whether people want to admit it or not. We are watching a lot of fucking movies from this universe, and I'm happy I was here for the marathon, but I'm glad it's going to be over soon because holy shit, I need a different title. That said, this movie still feels like the Guardians. Colorful, loud, emotional, funny, chaotic. It just doesn't hit me the same way the first two did, and that's okay. This feels more like a farewell album than like a greatest hit, if you know what I mean. Music pun. Let's get into it. So getting into the premise, this will be a pretty light on spoilers video, but there's no point of watching my reviews ever really if you haven't watched the movie that accompanies it. So go ahead, click off now, go watch the movie and come back if you haven't. The Guardians are fractured emotionally and physically, you know, after all these years and the fights and the type of situations they've gotten into. Peter Quill is still broken over Gamora dying, who no longer remembers him when she comes back as an alternate version, while the team struggles to function as a unit. It's kind of dysfunctional. When Rocket is gravely injured, the group is forced into a desperate mission that uncovers his tragic origins and pits them against the High Evolutionary, an obsessive alien scientist chasing perfect life through cruelty and control. And there's a lot of social commentary, there's a lot of interesting stuff going into that, and it is really cool how it's kind of like two different stories being told in one. Now I will get into the pacing and the stuff, and surely they could have separated some shit out, but I think the fact that they used this story and used this threat to tell the backstory of Rocket Raccoon and use the counter Earth, I think that is really cool. What starts as a rescue mission becomes a reckoning, not just with the villain, but with who these characters are and where they're headed next in the world of Marvel. So it's very interesting. Let's get into the nitty gritty. So getting into the good, we're just going to talk about like Rocket's backstory in itself. It's no question emotionally powerful. Rocket is the heart of this movie. His trauma, experimentation, and suffering are genuinely upsetting, and it really makes sense, you know, watching the previous Guardians of the Galaxy movies, why he acts the way he is, why he's so like narcissistic, why he's pessimistic as well. It's genuinely upsetting, and it finally gives weight to a character who's sort of been comic relief for years. You know, he's a cute little talking animal that I have grown to love, and shout out to Bradley Cooper for playing the character so well all of these films and all of the entries Rocket has been in as a voice actor, obviously, but it gives him some emotion, it gives him some like relatability. The animal experimentation storyline with him and all of the friends that are kind of like crippled almost in a way, it is very sad and it's very brutal, but it's also very effective, and I think this was a really nice inclusion in the film. You definitely feel for him, and I think that is the film's biggest win. Mantis, Drax, and Nebula I do think steal the movie though. Like besides Rocket's backstory, those are three of the best characters in the entire film. This trio is hilarious, surprisingly heartfelt, and all of them kind of develop in their own way and go the direction they've kind of been building towards over the last couple of movies. I think their comedy lands more consistently than Peter's even. Peter Quill is quite the funny guy, and shout out to, I can't remember the fucking actor's name, that is really sad. Their emotional arcs actually feel complete, and they have a really dope kind of relationship, and crazy enough, somewhat similar to Volume 2, you spend a lot of moments away from Star-Lord, maybe not as much as Volume 2, which can be a little more appreciated, but these three really, again, steal the show and get some of the biggest plot beats of the entire thing. Drax kind of is like turning back into a father, and he's like talking to these kids, he knows the language, and there's definitely some comedic elements with that as well, and all of these different things. He is such a nice guy at heart. He seems like an asshole, he seems like a big, muscular, macho asshole, and sure, it's even cliche to like turn the dumb, clunky brain guy into like a nice, genuine person. Sure, that seems cliche, but that's also very insensitive to say because the way they handled Drax's character here was phenomenal. Nebula kind of finds purpose, you know, she's no longer this stern, stubborn, like NPC-ish, has to do it her own way, judgmental, kind of like negative person. She's starting to really lighten up to these people, and I think that's another beautiful moment. And Mantis, of course, with her power, it really develops things. There's a lot of visuals and world building. The quantum vibe, the spacey vibe. Of course, the galactic vibe is always going to hit, and they do very well with the aesthetics. Counter-Earth is a really cool concept. I think the alien designs with that, and like the creatures and like the mutants, that's really fucking cool. You have a fish head on a human body. You have like vampire bats of all animals being the focus of this family that they land on. It's really fucking cool. The Counter-Earth literally looks exactly like Earth, but it has been kind of adapted to the liking of like the master guy. Again, I can't remember his fucking name because who gives a shit. We'll get into him as being an ass villain in a second, but like he's on the Statue of Liberty with like an animal. It's funny. I think all of it looks great. It's vibrant, it's weird, creative in a way. Again, Marvel doesn't always pull off anymore, and kind of similar sentiments with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. You know, you really get the creativity of these worlds, and like the Orgo kind of looking like this giant like flesh rings, which is kind of gross and weird to think about, but it was really cool. The music and the tone, I think the soundtrack is fantastic. I think it might be the strongest in the trilogy, and this isn't going to be the most positive review. Certainly I still enjoyed the movie, but something that is very redeeming about this is just how good the soundtrack is. Florence and the Machine was an absolute great choice. You know, you see Rocket scrolling through the phone, and he gets to like the 2000s playlist and it starts playing this, and like you're kind of sitting there waiting like, oh shit, like, you know, they have like the Walkman out, which is still like the classic retro vibe that you love from Guardians of the Galaxy. You see him pull it out and it's like 2000s, what's he gonna play from there? Because they've never really touched on that era. Florence and the Machine, amazing. The emotional beats are elevated by the music. It all makes sense, like Rocket singing along and kind of getting emotional towards the beginning to Creep by Radiohead. That's one of the best sequences of the movie. Watching this with someone who loves those songs like my dad makes it hit harder as well, because he kind of grew up with music like that in high school and stuff he was telling me about. So that was a pretty awesome story and a pretty awesome connection I kind of made as I was watching it with him. Also, I think the resolution with Peter going back to Earth makes sense for sure. I think it was the right call. It closes his arc without killing him, which obviously you really can't kill Peter Quill. He is the leader of the Guardians. Kind of gives him humanity again as well, connecting with the little family that he has left. Kind of leaves the door open with cheap cliffhangers. I know it does get kind of cliche and corny for Marvel to say Star-Lord will return. They did it literally in the last movie with Kang, and he showed up in the fucking Loki series. I do think for Peter though, this is a lot more grand and a lot more important, because he should be back, unless he was already in a series I'm not familiar with. He should be back for the Avengers movie coming up, and at the time this movie was coming out and people were seeing it in theaters and reacting to it, I'm sure that was a pretty incredible thing to see on the screen. So it's the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but Star-Lord isn't done yet, I guess. Getting into the bad, I'm not really trying to sound pessimistic or negative here, but I do think Rocket should have died in this movie. That sounds fucked up, but I think to give this the emotional weight that it's so heavily advertised, he should have probably died. As emotional again as Rocket's story is, just like getting into the backstory and the retrospect, and like him going through the situation of being hurt and the med pack's not working because they have this overridden, they have to override this fucking like kill switch thing. Bringing him back that easily, it feels like they did kind of bring him back easily. It undercuts the weight. It kind of like takes away from the legitimacy of the film. If this is truly the Guardians farewell, I think Rocket's sacrificing himself, not really sacrificing himself, because the way that Adam Warlock played by Poulter came in was kind of fucking stupid and random, but like him dying would have made this an unforgettable film for sure. Again, character deaths don't have to happen to make films great, and that is something that I see a problem with the whole discourse with like a Stranger Things, which we covered recently. Instead, it plays safe, and I think that kind of hurts the impact of the film. You saw Yondu die a couple films ago, and that's great. And the villains are extremely weak. Again, Marvel's on a pretty bad run right now over these last couple of movies of just villains. The High Evolutionary is effective in concept. I like his backstory. I like the social commentary that comes with it, but he's not compelling in presence. He's not a great villain. I don't really care for the actor that plays him. The idea that hyper-intelligent animals outsmarts him too, I think that's another thing. The fact that the animals outsmart what is supposed to be a mastermind, what is supposed to be kind of this evil scientist type of character, it makes him feel less threatening, because Rocket can easily just fuck this dude up, outsmart him. I made you! How did you think of that? Yeah, I don't fucking know either. That really doesn't make any sense. Adam Warlock is also a miss, honestly. He's just poorly written, oddly performed by Poulter, and I like Poulter. Mostly an unnecessary character as well. Like, he came in just to kind of be a threat at the beginning of the film, and then him and his mom are kind of ducked away, and the High Evolutionary is just kind of being the one. He does have like a cool but again kind of annoying and tired kind of character development and plot twist where he like eventually saves them and like realizes stuff. Marvel continues to struggle with villains post Thanos. I guess Kang was a good villain, but they're all just misplaced. They're all just not very well executed. The way they handled Gamora's character, I think, is very frustrating as well. Bringing her back only to make her colder, meaner, and emotionally disconnected feels very lazy, and it feels like you're almost like going back to square one, which I guess is kind of a cool concept when you think about it. The whole whole excuse about like, she's an alternate version of herself, we're in the multiverse, it doesn't fully justify undoing one of the MCU's best deaths, one of the most cinematic deaths in the history of this universe, you know, her getting pushed off the cliff as sacrifice. And Peter's arc with her also goes nowhere meaningful, as they don't really reach the resolution that you would kind of expect their characters to reach. Fine. Also, the movie's too long, and I think it's not too packed. I don't think there's too many plot points, but it focuses on a lot of things at the same time. It kind of does feel like, though, two scripts are mashed together, and Rocket's literally revived with nearly an hour left in the film, which I also thought was a very odd writing choice. It completely kills kind of momentum, because you were kind of expecting that to be the development going into the end of the movie, but it's like, no, Rocket's back alive and he can actually help kill the person, and that's a cool revenge arc. But hell, you could have made that a volume 4 movie. Like, why? Marvel needs to stop making every movie feel like a fucking endurance test as well. There were definitely moments I was fucking falling asleep to this thing, and that's not to say it's a bad movie, but Jesus Christ, do better, Marvel. And getting into the kind of just touching on Peter Quill's arc once more, it's just cut very thin. He doesn't really evolve beyond sad leader trying to get Gamora back into his good graces and get her back into a relationship. That's really all he feels like, and this whole series, it seems like, I love Peter Quill, and I love the actor for him. Again, I can't remember his name. For some fucking reason, I can't. But it seems like they've been trying to do this for the last 2 other films, and it's like, why do we keep doing this? It works emotionally, don't get me wrong, but it's not very interesting narratively. The action is good, but it's definitely familiar. I think the action is good, but the problem is we've seen so much action in the MCU that stuff like this is really not getting to me anymore. The choreography is strong, it's visually polished, but Marvel action has hit the saturation state, sadly, because it is grand. Like, there's amazing cinematography and camera shots and very impressive filmmaking that goes into making an action scene with Marvel, but it's just not jaw-dropping anymore. The humor is mostly solid, sometimes cheesy. I actually really like the humor. It is some of the best, probably, in the entire franchise so far, in the entire trilogy. I do think they hit the mark there. The jokes land more often than not, but some bits for sure can definitely drag it into the and that is exactly what it did. Cosmo, like, I've been a good boy, like the one-liners and all the cringy shit, like the weird-ass languages. It drifts into, like, it's goofy. I really don't know what else to say. In no way, getting into the review, pull up the tier list, in no way is this a bad movie. Not even close to that. It's emotional, funny, visually wild, and clearly made with care. Marvel clearly cares about closing out the story, but it is disappointing in small cumulative ways. Things do kind of stack up against this movie that maybe kind of give it lower scores than the other films. It plays things too safe for what feels like a goodbye, fumbles its villains, and stretches itself thin. That said, it still leagues better than something like Quantumania. Again, I hate to like be the comparison guy and shit on movies I've already shit on before, but that's how it is. It has heart, it has personality, and even if it's not my favorite Guardians entry, I'm glad it's here. I'm glad we got some closure on these heroes, and I'm glad I got to experience the end of this team as a part of a Marvel marathon. And if this is the final Guardians movie, it is a good farewell, just not a perfect one. It's emotionally strong, visually fun, occasionally frustrating, a solid but imperfect send-off that I respect more than I love. I am giving this a 7.8 out of 10. Now, you could debate that this is like an 8 out of 10 movie, but I do think it is a tier or so below the 2 other movies we've gotten. I will give it a 7.8 out of 10. I will stand on that, and I'll pop up my rankings just so you guys can kind of see, and I need to start doing this more often, like pop the rankings on the screen so you guys can kind of see the comparisons between what I gave the films. So with that being said, I am out, guys. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, do whatever. Go check out the social media. We are going to continue on. Marvel is our biggest priority. Marvel and the NFL season, as we're kind of closing out with the playoffs and whatnot. We have like a month left in the NFL season, maybe even a little more than that, but we're closing those out. We're closing out Marvel. We're going to get into a Stranger Things rewatch. I have all my shit set up in the back, all my Stranger Things shit. So I'm very hyped to get into a rewatch of this entire series and review the first 3 seasons. So peace. I'm a crazy